After 20 years of building together through dust, deadlines, and damn good ideas, Pace and Adam invite you to join them for honest conversations about the home building world. Welcome to Build Connected, where experience meets insight, powered by Diamond Home Restoration.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Build Connected. We are on episode 27. You know, that's my lucky number. So this is a good one. It's going to be a good one. I can feel it. What's going on, Pace? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for asking. I was someone was asking me over the weekend, like how tough doing the podcast was, and like kind of what the research is and all that. And I was telling them that the whole idea was to kind of recreate our conversations that you and I have in the truck. We've got multiple jobs going on all the time, and we usually divide and conquer. Like you're checking in on one job, I'm at another. We usually are talking on the phone throughout the day, on the day's issues, and sometimes we're meeting in the middle, wherever that is. But we're trying to keep that sort of unrehearsed, like everyday real conversation we have about products and the job site and whatever, and just that whole vibe. I mean, I know contractors in general do this in their day, and that's kind of the spirit we wanted. So there's very little research, like you and I this morning were talking about what we were going to talk about. And it's funny because we just got done, a half an hour talk on various products. And then it was like, well, what product were we going to talk about? And like, we're already talking about products. And anyway, that's how I'm doing.
Yeah, usually when you and I are talking in the truck, it's me yelling at you to slow down or stop yelling at people. That's
Yep.
generally what it's about. But anyway, let's get into it. Our product today that we're going to talk about is a product made by a company called Aquor, Aquor. They make all kinds of different hose bibs, specifically if you're in an area where you have freezing and thawing and that sort of thing. That's where these things shine. They're a really modern looking, sleek looking hose bib that has kind of a flap of a cover plate that you can get in various colors, matte black, chrome. But the idea is that these are plumbed inside of the wall, so they're in an insulated cavity, and there's no knob like a typical spigot would have, right? They sell these things with a male connector that you basically insert into their mechanism, and you twist it for the water to flow out. And that little male connector is designed for a hose attachment as well. I actually put one on my place. I'm up here in Tahoe right now. We're doing a project up here, but I put one on my place up here. And even whether or not you're in that kind of freeze thaw area, and I think these things are pretty nice to have regardless, just because you have that sleek look. And some people that are in an area, a very urban environment, right? They usually have these keys that they have for their spigots so people can't steal their water or turn them on. It's also a good thing to have in an area like that, regardless of the freezing or not. But these also have the ability to hook up hot and cold, so you can utilize them for showering your pet. All kinds of uses. But yeah, you should check out their website. They're really neat. You need a plumber to install them, but all kinds of options there.
Yeah, I think back to the old school way of dealing with this freezing issue. My camp in Maine, we have shutoffs inside of the wall so that when we winterize the place, we turn the shutoff valve off in our basements, and then we keep the hose bib open so they drain out, and you don't have anything within that freezing zone to do damage. This is just a much sleeker, more aesthetic solution that's one less fitting as well. So less likely to have a problem and looks a lot better. So it's a great new product. Like you said, it's been out for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see putting one of these in just to rinse your pet off and stuff. I mean, I've got one of those high maintenance pets, he likes the warm water, so
They
we'll
say
see.
that pets take after their owners, so that your pet is high maintenance
Yeah,
makes
here we go.
a lot of sense.
Yes. All right, what are you gonna talk about today, Pace?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna ease into a conversation that we'll talk about multiple times on the podcast, and that's contracts. As a builder or as any service provider, you need a contract with your client. And when you're young, it's a kind of a daunting thing putting a piece of paper in front of a client saying sign this. But it is a requirement. Like on our projects, we're dealing with a lot of money. So just making sure that you formalize that relationship, it starts there. But it's also a way to get rid of the whole he said, she said environment, right? It's a something. It's terms on what two parties have agreed on, and I think that that's a dollar figure, but it's also a scope of work. At its most basic, and it's something that, in those rare circumstances where a project goes off the rails, it's a way to protect yourself, your company. In our careers, you and I started back in 2008. I was thinking about this morning. I can only think of two occurrences where we had to even just mention um, the contract. There was one time we did get into it to settle a dispute. The other time was just it was about something minor, about maybe working hours. I can't recall, but it is there to protect both parties. And, there are lots of details that we'll get into in future episodes. But I think today I just wanted to just kind of say that out loud, that you've got to be working with a contract. And, you hear about a lot of people who have a one pager and it just kind of says, hey, we're going to be doing their kitchen and, we're going to do it for $10,000 and let's sign on the dotted line. You really need to have a lot more in there, from insurance clauses to, like I mentioned before, kind of working hours. You need to put a timeline to the project. You need to refer to documents, so that exact scope is in, either plans or some verbiage that says what you're doing. There's a lot of specifics that we'll get into in the future, but that's the general idea that I wanted to mention today.
Yeah, lots of different contracts we could be talking about. I don't want to stir the pot, Pace. What do you think of those AIA contracts?
We will never work with one again.
Well,
It's been
first
a
of all,
long.
let's let the AIA contract, for people that don't know, it stands for American Institute of Architects. It's typically a contract that architects like to submit if they're in charge of the project per se. This is a whole nother episode we'll get into. I just like to get Pace's blood boiling because I know he can't stand those AIAs, and I agree with him on this, but just wanted to poke the bear a little bit. You know what I mean?
It's a biased document. It does not have the contractor's position in mind. It serves the client really well. It serves the architect really well. It does not serve the builder well. So we will not work with that document. We have our attorney behind us on that. And we've spent like when you get to, when you've been in business for a while, your contract continues to evolve. There's always new things that you run into on the job. And, as appropriate, we update our contract just to cover every possible um, thing. And an attorney needs to be uh, part of your team.
Okay, well, more to come on contracts. Yeah. Um, let's talk about some interesting things happening on a project or two. This is a topic that I think a lot of people can relate to, and it's about rats.
Yes.
Yes, rats. I've had rats in my own house, not in the house per se, but in the crawl space, and it was an issue. And I have some close friends that just purchased a house, and they had a rat infestation. and it can be expensive to mitigate these little bastards. But through some different people that specialize in this kind of thing, I did come across an individual that, for me, we all have people that we love to promote because they did such a good job, and I guess this is me promoting the guy that helped me with our rat situation. But I certainly certainly learned a lot. When rats urinate, they that smell, it attracts other rats.
Rat
So the
cologne.
yeah, exactly. It's rat cologne. Yeah. And the infestation just gets worse and worse. But the way that my rat man mitigated this issue is, gosh, he spent 2 or 3 days in a 2 foot tall crawl space. God bless this guy. I mean, he loves his job and he's passionate about it, and he's so knowledgeable about it. But the goal was to patch up every single hole or tiny little penetration that a rat could squeak through. Now, Pace, you or I, we don't really have that eye, I think, to identify these kind of things. But he kind of shared with me he looks for areas where there's grease marks from their belly. There was we have these things called Contra Costa valves on our plumbing. And in my crawl space, there's a vent pipe for the main sewer line. And on top of that vent pipe is a cap with a ball. And that ball stops things from crawling down into the pipe. But he noticed grease marks on the pipe. I guess they were coming out of the sewer, pushing the ball up and coming up through the pipe. Bananas. That's right. So anyway, the objective is to seal everything off, trap these rats in the crawl space, and once they're trapped, then he starts baiting them, and he sets these bait traps. And man, he caught a whole bunch of these. His theory behind this is if the rats, if you just trap them without closing up the holes, they tend to want to go out into nature and capture their food out there. When they're trapped, they have no other option. So anyway, that's once he traps all the rats, he then brings in his fog machine, and the fog machine gets rid of all that urination smell, all that rat cologne paste you called it. And anyway, that's kind of his method. I know people have other methods. It it worked, and I recommended him to other people. So anyway, something to think about if you got rats. That's kind of I'd say a 5-star approach, and others might have their own approach. Pace, you ever have any rat issues, mice issues that you've had to deal with? I bet you have.
First of all, this is the best topic that we will ever talk about. Like, whether or not you know it, everybody has a rodent problem, right? Some people are more successful in their journey, but if you're in an urban environment, there are certainly rats around. If you're in a more rural country environment, you've got mice. There's no doubt about it. And so, like, just how you deal with it, like the level it bothers you, the level you successfully mitigate it, like you said, it varies. Yeah, my place in Maine, it's all about mice. There are rats too, but it's all about mice. And when you're not in a place full time, mice can really set up shop. So, like, we have someone that we bring in and do bait stations and a lot of the things that you're talking about. But when I'm there, I'm actively trapping too. And there's some nights where you're walking away with 7, 10 mice, and it's nice. But we've got so many stories here. We're doing it less now than we used to, now that we're out of San Francisco. But I feel like we used to do a restaurant remodel a year. And there are some horrifying stories that we have witnessed.
Oh,
Um,
remember the rat guy, John Lennon? Remember that
I
guy?
sure do. I
There you
remember
go.
John Lennon.
John Lennon was
Um,
was another rat guy in San Francisco.
he was good, and he's at the heart of one of our stories. I think this is going to be a special segment in the future, but let me just summarize it with: we were excavating a plot next to a restaurant, and as we started digging, we drove the rats out of the hillside and into the restaurant. And the number on the first night that we trapped was well into the hundreds. It just tells you when you disturb their pathways, their tunnels, They need a place to go, and a restaurant is a great place to go for a rat. We have lots of Chinatown. Like, I don't know, like if the nation is aware of the mythology of the tunnels underneath Chinatown in San Francisco. We have some experience with remodeling underground at a couple of restaurants and have stories that we could share. But yeah, rats, when you drive them out of their home, they go someplace else.
And like I said, God bless those people that are great mitigators of that. And I got to give this guy a plug. If you're in the Marin area, Tamil Pais Rodent Solutions, give this guy a call. He's the best.
Did you mean to say Tamil Pius?
That's what I said, Tamil Pais.
Philly coming through.
Oh man, here we go.
Yeah, that's a good plug. We'll throw his name up there. Yeah, a good rodent guy everybody needs.
We
No
got to
doubt.
have him on.
Well, I remember actually when we lived in Pacifica, we had gophers, and I had the gopher guy. There's a second plug.
Oh yeah.
And this guy was an ex-game warden, and he was a tracker, and he got down there and he thought like a gopher. He was all business. And when you're paying somebody by the head, right, you know you've got the right guy.
Nice.
Well, anything else fun going on up there at Vacation Land in Tahoe?
Oh, it's vacation land. You know,
I don't know. I don't ask
we
questions. I
do
don't want to
have
get
a
yelled at.
project for a client up here that I'm contributing to. Thank you very much. You know, actually last night something interesting happened. I've got my dog up here, and we were asleep. It was the middle of the night, and my dog started going nuts and barking at the back door. It must have been 3 in the morning. I turned on the lights out there, and there was the biggest bear. Huge. I mean, I was like kind of frozen. I mean, the bears up here, they're pretty friendly. They're like almost like Yogi the bear. They'll almost walk in and be polite. But I'll tell you, when you see a creature that big, it was startling. I wanted to grab my phone and take a video, but I was just like starstruck almost. And you know, finally my dog scared him off. And by scared off, the bear pretty much like looked at me, looked at the dog, turned around and just kind of slowly walked away. But yeah, the bears up here are no joke. They love getting into people's houses, and we've got bear wire on most of the houses up here to keep them at bay. You know, we did have a couple of bear break-ins before that bear wire went up, and luckily not too much damage. But there's a claw mark on the refrigerator. Good stuff.
That will get your attention. That's a much better story than my raccoon encounter. All right. Well, that was really good stuff. All right. Thanks for another great episode. Thanks for joining everybody. I'm Pace.
And I'm Adam.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Build Connected. For more stories, insights, and ideas, visit diamondhomerestoration.com or find us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We'll be back next week. We hope you will too.